Masha Gessen, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you. Good to be here.
The European Union is beginning its entry negotiations with Ukraine. How do you think Vladimir Putin will respond to these talks in Luxembourg?
I'm not in the business of making predictions. I think I'm much more comfortable talking about what we actually know is happening. And what we know is happening is that Ukraine and Russia have entered a stage of the war that is protracted and that is ultimately beneficial to Russia and incredibly destructive for Ukraine. And the longer it goes on, the more true that is, even if the front line essentially remains frozen, which basically is what we're looking at, right? Russia has made some gains. Ukraine has taken some land back. But in the end, exhausting and depleting Ukraine changes Ukraine. And Russia has endless cannon fodder and endless resources because it's a totalitarian state to keep prosecuting this war.
Now, does Putin at the same time, does he need and does he want a ceasefire, do you think?
No. Simple answer, no. He does not need a ceasefire. He does not want a ceasefire. He has retooled the Russian economy to be a war economy. He has retooled the Russian identity, basically, to be a war identity. And so the only way at this point that he stays in power is to continue, at least sort of in terms of propaganda, fighting a big war. And the big war is against the United States and NATO, in his mind, and Ukraine as a proxy. So it's not entirely impossible that there would be a ceasefire, but I think he has very little motivation to try to seek it.
The degree to which he seems to have prevailed after the early setbacks in the war, I think takes us all by surprise. As you said, he's managed to rearm successfully. He also seems to be managing to get around the sanctions. How is he playing such an effective game?
Well, partly the West is letting him in two distinct ways. It's easy for him to get around the sanctions because the sanctions never really affected the lifeblood of the Russian economy, which is oil and gas. And so the war machine continues to be fed. Ordinary people suffer, but the war machine doesn't. So that's part one. Part two, Western aid to Ukraine has been slow, unreliable, and severely limited. If we talk a lot about how incredibly unanimous the West has been in supporting Ukraine, and that's true rhetorically, and it's true in the sense that every Western country has contributed to some extent to the Ukrainian war effort. But they have placed incredible, unbearable limits on Ukraine's ability to fight. And just to put this in perspective, NATO, the Western powers, have had the power, the military power, to end this war the day it began. They had the military power to close the airspace. They had the military power to put boots on the ground and help Ukraine fight Russia back. And so the fact that this war has gone on for 2.5 years means that the West is basically content to continue this war, to allow this war to go on as long as only Ukrainians are dying. And that's what we're watching. And Putin knows this as well as I know this. So of course he's been able to prevail after the initial setbacks.
Now, I mean, his conditions, whatever we are to make of those for these prospective negotiations over peace, are full control over 4 parts of Ukraine, dropping all the sanctions, and for Ukraine to pledge never to join NATO. Do any of these demands represent a meaningful offer in any way?
Well, let's think about what it looks like from the Ukrainian perspective. First of all, not only is Putin demanding certain parts of Ukraine, he's demanding parts of Ukraine that Russia is not currently occupying. So he's basically saying to Ukrainians, give me these cities, give me the people who live in those cities, or take agency over displacing these people. I mean, this is an impossible offer to even contemplate. So he basically says, commit to never arming yourself, never making yourself capable of defending yourselves better than you are able to defend yourselves now. So give me ample time to rearm, regroup, replan, so I can take over the rest of Ukraine, while you will be obligated by the conditions of the ceasefire not to beef up your defense. That's another offer that is impossible for Zelensky to contemplate.
Going back to Vladimir Putin's Russia, reportedly he's putting a lot of the children of his cronies into positions of power. Will the qualities of the Putin regime survive his lifetime?
Probably not, in the sense that it's such a personalized regime that, and we know what generally happens with these kinds of regimes. There's no succession plan. He thinks he's going to live forever. And so when he dies, there's going to be a mad scramble, and whoever ends up in power is going to try to maintain Putinism without Putin. We also know that from the history of similar regimes, that usually doesn't work. That would be an unstable situation. Basically, the state of equilibrium that Putinism is in depends on Putin's presence at the center of both money and power. But I just want to say, he's 72 years old. He has the best healthcare in the world. I don't know that I'm going to outlive him, and I'm quite a bit younger. I'm not planning for Russia after Putin.
Masha Gessen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And Masha Gessen is speaking at the Festival of Dangerous Ideas in Sydney next month.